Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm going to show you how to use Git without any command lines, and I promise by the end of this video, you'll be comfortable with Git. Here's how we're going to do it. If you want to skip ahead, here are all the video timestamps. First, we're going to get all the right software installed. For Mac, Linux, and PC, it's all the same software. Next, we're going to secure your GitHub and GitLab accounts with SSH keys. I'll explain what this means and why it's helpful. As for GitHub and GitLab, they're functionally identical, so whichever you choose is fine. Then we'll go over a few terms in Git. And finally, I'm going to walk you through building a real project. First, we'll need Visual Studio Code. So we'll download. And as you go through, all of the default settings are fine. Once code is installed, come over to this vertical set of icons. It's called the activity bar. And go to the bottom one for extensions. We need to install Git Graph. So type Git Graph and just click the install button. And this is the tool we're going to use to be able to work with Git without having to do a single command. Now that this is installed, we can come over to the Git tab. And if you don't have Git installed, it will tell you that right here, a valid Git installation was not detected. Another way to check is just open a command prompt and type git. So what we need to do now is go to git-scm.com and click download. Now there are a number of things we're going to change on this download, so I'll walk you through every bit of it. First, we'll just enter and press next. We're going to take the default location. We won't change any components. All defaults are fine. Start menu is fine. Here's the first change. Our text editor is going to be Visual Studio Code. And next. Now this next section is interesting. It hasn't worked in recent releases. It considers everything to be a tree. So as you write your code, it keeps growing over time. It grows upwards like a trunk of a tree. So you'll see you can set this to be called trunk, and that's what I will be referring to it as. But we're going to let Git decide. It's currently called master, and in the future it should be called main or trunk. We're going to leave the path variable as it is. We'll use OpenSSL. This next screen depends on your operating system. I'm showing you in Windows. I'll also be showing you in Mac. But for this setup, Windows style checkout. And you can absolutely use Minty, but I will be using default Windows configuration. Git pull is something we're not going to worry about, so we're going to allow default. And we'll use the existing credential manager. We won't change the extra options. And you can go ahead and play around with the experimentals. They are always great, but I'm not going to install either. And now we'll click finish. Now we have one last thing to do to set up Git. So I've closed and reopened Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to go to terminal, new terminal. So you type git config -- global user.name, and the name you put in here is going to be what's listed as the author for all of your code in Git. So I'll write Ryan and press enter. If you got an error, just close code and reopen it. And now one more line, git config -- global user.email. It's important to use SSH keys. What they are is a public and private pair of keys, and it's a way of authenticating your code. Usually when people use Git, they create a project on their computer, and that's where it lives and dies. But Git's a lot more powerful than that. And it's really beneficial to always start your projects on GitHub or GitLab. And I'm going to show you how to set this up with SSH keys on each. Now again, these are the exact same commands you'll use on Windows, Linux, or Mac. So to make things easy, I'm going to go into my SSH folder, cd to home and cd to .ssh. If you're using Windows, it's cd c:users, then your name, then .ssh. To create the keys, it's ssh-keygen, and the type of key -t is RSA, the number of bits 4096, and we're going to write a comment, -C, it's usually your email address. Now it's going to ask us where to store the key, and the path that it gives us is in parentheses. I'm not going to use that default name. I'm going to call it ID DI-RI and press enter. When you enter a passphrase, the cursor is not going to move. So just type in your passphrase and type it once more and you're done. So when we look at the directory, you have two files now. The file you've named and another one called .pub. That's your public file that you can give to anyone. So all we have to do now is upload this to GitHub and GitLab. In GitHub, go to your settings and then SSH and GPG keys. And you can watch the entire tutorial right here. But we're gonna put in a new key, and a nice shortcut to get access to this key is just open Visual Studio Code, open your .pub file, and you can paste it in here. And now it's in GitHub. I'll do the exact same thing in GitLab. Go to your profile, go to Edit Profile, SSH keys, and you can follow the tutorial right here as well. We're just gonna paste this in. We know it worked because we see the title, and we don't want to put an expiration date, and just click Add Key. Now the key's been added. So we've generated the key, we've uploaded it to GitHub and GitLab, and now we have to let our computer know that that key exists. So the command for that is ssh-add, and then the key name. And we want to use the private key here, so not pub. Enter your passphrase, and that's it. If you had a problem in Windows, this is a Windows only issue, you can go to Services, type OpenSSH, choose Properties, and your startup type is most likely set to disabled. So choose Automatic, then click Start, and it'll work for you. These are all the terms we need to know. Clone means download. If you want to clone to your computer, it means you want to download a project to your computer. A branch is a complete copy of your project, bit for bit, and you'll see visually that it extends off the trunk just like the branch of a tree would. When you want to write any code, you write the code in a new branch. That's because it's easier to undo a mistake on your own branch instead of the trunk. It's also really nice to set up your branches as a series of milestones, and that's exactly what I'm going to show you. Trunk or main is the main branch of code. At the time of making this video, it's actually called master, sometimes called main, and you can see this in the bottom left of Visual Studio. The main branch of code is what goes into production, or if you're in school, it's the clean version of code that you submit. You never want to make changes directly on trunk or main. You make a new branch as a safety net, and I'm going to show you this in depth. Merge just means combine the new version with the old. Once you've finished working on a branch of code and it's clean and working well, you merge it back into the trunk. Origin. This is where the project is originally built, and for us it's always going to mean the GitHub or GitLab servers. Push and pull. When we've made progress on our local computer's copy of the project, we push that code back to GitHub or GitLab, and when we're working with other people, we periodically want to get the newest copy of code, so we pull from GitHub or GitLab. We only clone once, and that's the very beginning. Every other time we want to sync up, we push our code and pull the updates. Staging. When we make a new version of our project, we look through all the changed files and choose which ones will be part of the newest version. These files get staged. Usually we choose every file, but sometimes you want, say, only front-end code or back-end code to be part of the new version. So all the updated files that we choose to be added to the newest version get staged. Now we're ready, and this is what we're going to build. It's a bunch of pendulums. So let's go to GitHub and GitLab and create our projects. First, I'll show you in GitHub. Just click Create Repository. I'm going to call it Pendulum. We'll make it private, and we'll add a README file. You don't have to use the README, but without the README file, it's an empty project, and you do need to use a command line to download it properly. Click Create Repository, and to clone the project, click the Code button, choose SSH, and click the clone icon. For GitHub, you just create a project, choose a blank project. I'll also call it Pendulum. It's private and it already has the README file. Click Create Project and click the clone button and choose the icon next to Clone with SSH. Now I'll open Visual Studio Code, and you can either be in Explorer or in the Git tab and choose Clone Repository. Then just paste what you'd copied and press enter. Now this window is a little confusing. It doesn't actually mean where you want your project to be. It's going to be the level higher, and Visual Studio is going to create a folder inside of that with your project name. So I'll go to code/YouTube and choose select repository. I'll choose open. If you don't click this in time, the window goes away. You don't have to clone again. You just open the folder that has been created. And now we have our project on our computer. It's just one README file for now. So the very first thing I'm going to do is go to the Git tab and click the Git Graph icon. I always leave Git Graph as the leftmost tab of all of my projects. This is where we're going to be able to work with Git without having to write any commands. Anything that's circled in blue is a branch, and the one that's bold is the current branch we're on. So we can see the main branch, it's bold. We can also see that in the bottom corner here. This project is going to be built based on milestones. So I'll have one branch per milestone, and here they are. My first milestone will be very simple. I just want to add the JavaScript libraries. Then I'm going to build one pendulum. Then I'm going to write a class so I can have any number of pendulums. And then I'm going to stylize a project, and I'll show you in here when you make mistakes how you can fix them with branches. So the first thing I want to do is create a new branch. There's two ways to do it. You can either go to the ellipsis, choose branch, and create branch, or the much easier way, just click your current branch and type the name of any new branch you want. So my milestone is to add JavaScript libraries. I'll call this the libraries branch. You can either click create new branch or just press enter. So now we have a new copy of the project. It's called libraries, and that's the bold branch. Libraries shows up in the bottom corner as well, so we know that's the branch we're working on. I'll click on Explorer, and I'll add two files, index.html and sketch.js. For our index file, it's just going to pull in a library called P5. It's a really nice visualizing library, and we're going to tell it that we have that sketch file here as well. I'll leave sketch empty. To make sure this works, I'm just going to open the project and drag the index file into Chrome and inspect it for any errors. There's no errors, so I'm happy with this. I usually don't want a milestone to be this short, but for this project, I want to show you the steps. So to check this in as a new version, I go to the Git Graph tab, and I go over to the Git tab on the activity bar. Here we see all the files that have changed. I want to add all of them. You can either hover over each and press the plus, or you can hover over changes, press the plus there, and now they're all staged. Now I write a message to remind myself what this version did. Added JavaScript libraries, and all I have to do is check it in. So choose the files, write a message, and check it in. Before we check it in, what's going to happen here is that libraries as a branch is going to grow higher. So it grows up to the next level, and the message of uncommitted changes will be replaced with our message of added JavaScript libraries. So I check it in, and there we have it. Libraries is our newest version. Now you can click this and get the details. It shows you all the files that were added to the version. You can click it, and you'll see on the left side how the file used to look. It didn't exist. And on the right side, how it is now. Okay, that's it for this branch. Now I want to merge it back into main. In order to do that, I have to jump over to main. So I right click on main, and I choose checkout branch. If you right click on the description or anywhere else in the line, you get a different menu. So right click on main, checkout branch. Main's now bold, and down in the bottom corner we see main as well. And now I tell main what branch I want to merge into it. So I right click libraries, and I choose merge into current branch. This pop-up never needs anything to change. Just click yes merge. And now we see that libraries took a branch off to the side. We had one version, and then we merged it back into main. The next thing I want to do is create a pendulum. So I'm going to create a new branch. I click on the main branch, the one I'm currently on. I'll type pendulum and press enter. You can play around here too. If you want to rename it, just right click on the branch, choose rename, and you can say build pendulum. If you put a space, you can't use that, so use a dash. I'll rename the branch. So now I'm going to build the pendulum. And for that, my first step is to make a canvas. So if I refresh, now I have my canvas. And again, you don't have to make a new version for every line of code, but I want to show you the steps. So I go to Git Graph, I make sure I'm on the Git tab, and I do my 3 steps. Choose the files for the new version, write a message, and check it in. So I hover over sketch.js, I click the plus, it's now staged. My version is created canvas, and when I check it in, the build pendulum branch will grow upwards, it'll grow to the next line, uncommitted changes will be removed, and created canvas will replace it as the description. There we go. Now I want to actually put a pendulum on the screen. So this code should do it for me. If I refresh, okay, we have a static pendulum. So this is a good place to make a new version. I want to go over to the Git Graph tab, make sure that I'm on the Git tab for the activity bar. I choose my file. I'll write the message, a reminder to myself what this version did, static pendulum, and I'll check it in. When I check it in, build pendulum grows 1 level higher, uncommitted changes goes away, and our message of static pendulum will replace it. There we go. Now I want the pendulum to swing. This code should do it. And when I refresh, now we have a swinging pendulum. I go back to the Git Graph tab. I'm on the Git tab for the activities bar. I click the plus next to the file we want. The message, the reminder of what we did in this version, swinging pendulum works. And when I check this in, build pendulum will go up one more level and our message will take the place of uncommitted changes. Now this milestone's done, I'm gonna merge it into main. I right click on main and I check out the branch. Now I tell main what branch I want to merge into it. So I right click on the pendulum and I choose merge into current branch. We never have to change this, just choose yes merge. And there we can see that the build pendulum branch had 3 separate versions and it was merged back into main. Now I want to actually push this back to the server so I can pull the newest code from anywhere so I can give anyone else access and they can get the newest code too. So to do that, I'm back on main, I click the ellipsis and I choose push. When I choose push, what's going to happen is the origin or the GitHub or GitLab server will advance up to the top level because it's going to have this newest version of code. So ellipsis, push, and we'll see origin jumps to the top. If ever you're working on another computer or a friend is working on it with you, you can always just click the ellipsis and choose pull, and it'll bring the newest version from the server. So I have 2 more milestones. I want to build multiple pendulums, so I click on main, and I'm going to call this branch multiple pendulums, and press enter. This code has a class of pendulums, and this should be it for us. I refresh, and there we have multiple pendulums. So one more time, I'll go to Git Graph, to the Git tab, I'll choose the file, and I'll write the message that I made a class of pendulums. And it's important to make a short message because all you have is this length of the description here. When I check this in, multiple pendulums will grow up 1 level, and our message will take the place of uncommitted changes. So now I want to merge that in. I right click main, I check out branch, and I tell main that I want the multiple pendulums branch to be merged into it. Right click multiple pendulums and merge into current branch. Yes merge. That's it. Now let's make some mistakes. So for this final milestone, this is where I'm going to stylize it. And I'll show you a couple ways to fix mistakes with branches. So I'm going to make a new branch and I'll call it style and press enter. And this is my safety net. This is where the power of branching really comes into play. What I'm going to do first is make a mistake and check it in, and I'll show you how to undo that. Let's go to the code, and I'm going to change the color of the pendulums. I refresh, and now they're blue. So I'll check this in. I go to Git Graph, I make sure I'm on the Git tab. Again, if I was on the Explorer tab, I'd see every file. When I'm on the Git tab, I only see the files that have changed. So I choose the file that I want added. It's now staged. And I'll mention that I made blue pendulums. I'll check this in, and style will grow up to the next level. There we go. But at this point, I realize I made a mistake. I wanted them to be green. So I could just change the code right here, or I could undo my change. To undo the change, click the ellipsis, commit, undo last commit. And now we see the file is staged. If I refresh, it's still the same blue, but what I can do is unstage this. So hover over the staged file, click the minus, and now it's just a changed file. If I hover over a changed file, I can click discard changes. Are you sure? Yes. And when I do that and refresh, we're back to the original white pendulums. So I can go back to our code and RGB, I can make them green. I refresh, and now I have my green pendulums that I wanted from the start. So I go to Git Graph. I'm still on the style branch. If I forgot what I was working on, I can click uncommitted changes. And it says you've made 1 addition and 1 subtraction on the sketch file. I can click that. The old version is on the left, the new version is on the right. Anything deleted is in red, anything added is in green. I can see it used to read RGB as 250, 250, 250. It's now 0, 250, 0. So it used to read white, it now reads green. And close that, minimize this. I'll stage that file, and I'll change my message to green pendulums. I'll check this in, and we're set. Now, I want to push this off to the server one more time. I'm not going to push a separate branch. It's a little advanced to do that. I'm going to merge everything back into main, push it to the server, and then that will be the end of the project. So I right click on main, check out the branch. I right click on style, I merge it into main, yes merge. And now I want to push this to origin, to GitHub or GitLab. Right now, GitHub knows a couple of versions earlier. That's where origin is listed. When I choose ellipsis, push, origin's going to show up at the top. And now it has this newest version of code. I can take this code anywhere to any computer, and I have this newest version. So that's all there is. I know this is a really overwhelming project. It was for me to create it. So if you have any questions, please let me know, and I respond to every comment. And just know that this takes time to learn. So if you watch it through a few more times, it will make more and more sense. So I hope you have a great time. Thanks for watching.